Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making a slim cardigan with pockets. This cardigan is a bit of a spiritual successor to a classic cardigan I made many moons ago, but made for what I'm feeling these days. There's just enough alpine, just enough straight lines, and the perfect amount of pockets, which is 2 of course, one for your phone and one for snacks. Speaking of, if you fancy wearing cardigans that can hold all the things, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet tutorials and patterns, including many with large pocket cardigans dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 550 grams of yarn. That's 1,230 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCD DIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us your favorite social media platform. I feel super old when I say it, but mine would have to be Instagram. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but we can adjust it for our size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this cardigan started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5.5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that reaches from mid-chest over to the tip of our shoulder. Now I need roughly 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, so I'm going to make a chain of 25. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to do our half double crochet row. So start by blocking out that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet. Into the chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, insert your hook. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that is our first half double crochet. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain until we reach the end of the row. We are back. Our row 1 is complete. Now from here, we're going to need to insert some stitch markers so that we can separate each of our sections. So the look of this front panel is going to be ribbing, alpine stitches in the middle, and then the same ribbing along the outer edge. So we're all going to start by inserting our stitch markers into an even number of stitches where we want to section off the ribbing versus the alpine stitch detail. We just want to make sure that the amount of stitches that we have for the ribbing is even on both sides. So we can make this as wide or as narrow as we'd like. I'd like for my ribbing details to be just 1.5 inches or 3 centimeters. So from the outer edges, I just insert my stitch marker into the 6th stitch. Now what we're going to do from here for our even number row is back loop slip stitches until we reach our stitch marker, single crochets, and then closing out the row with more back loop slip stitches. So let's all chain 1 and flip our work. Now to do our first back loop slip stitch, we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch, into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over, and then gently pull through everything on our hook. We want to make sure that we're pulling through gently, otherwise the following row can be a little too tight to work into. Let's do that again. Into that next stitch, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. Continue with 1 back loop slip stitch until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch, which I am right here. Now once we are worked into our stitch marker stitch, make sure you're inserting your stitch marker into the top of that stitch just so we know where each of these sections starts and ends. Now working into the middle portion, we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. So to get that started, into that next available stitch, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Pretty simple. Again, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and continue with 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our following stitch marker. Now I put 1 single crochet into every stitch and my following stitch marker is reached. I did not work into that stitch marker because I want to make sure that we have the same amount of stitches for our ribbing on both sides. So now I'm going to take out my stitch marker into that following stitch and start with my back loop slip stitches. So into that first stitch's back loop, we're going to insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. And don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that first stitch. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, insert, pull through everything, and from here just continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So we are back. Our row 2 is now complete. Now we can get started on our first alpine stitch row. So what we're going to do is chain 2 and flip our work. Now for the outer edges of our piece, it is going to be our ribbing. So from here until we reach our stitch marker, we're going to be putting one back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So to get that started, yarn over. Into that first stitch's back loop, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, yarn over, next stitch's back loop, pull through all 3, and continue with one back loop half double crochet into every stitch. And we want to make sure that we're working into our stitch marker stitch to have the same amount of stitches as our slip stitches from the previous row. Now that I've completed my back loop half double crochets, don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that last stitch. Now from here we can get started on our alpine stitch detail. Now it's going to start for everyone with a front post double crochet. So what we're going to do is take a look at our row 1. We're going to be counting out the amount of stitches that we sectioned off for our ribbing portion and then do our front post double crochet into that next stitch. So as an example, I sectioned off 6 stitches. So we're all going to yarn over. Insert your hook underneath the body of that stitch and through the other side. Then once we have that, we're going to yarn over and pull through. Then when we have these 3 loops on our hook, we're all going to pull up tall to get the same height as our half double crochets. Then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that is our first front post double crochet. Now the next stitch for our alpine stitch detail is going to be a half double crochet. So we are going to be skipping 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as that stitch, and into the following, simply insert with a half double crochet. And we're just going to continue on with 1 front post double and a half double crochet, making our way down until we reach our following stitch marker stitch. So let's just do this again together. So to do our next front post double, yarn over. We're going to skip over that following half double crochet from our previous odd number row because keeping in mind we do need to work into our previous odd number row for all of our alpine stitch details because this half double crochet that we just did counts as that stitch. So what we're going to do is skip that next stitch and then into the next, underneath the body. When we have these 3 loops, pull up tall, pull through 2, and that is our front post double, and then our half double crochet. So yarn over. Skip 1 stitch from our previous row and into the next, insert with a half double, and that's it. We're just going to continue on with our front post double and half double crochets until we reach our following stitch marker stitch. So we have just finished up our alpine stitch detail and we have reached our following stitch marker stitch. Now we want to make sure that we are not working into that stitch marker stitch because we want to make sure that we're keeping the same amount of stitches for both sides of our ribbing, and everyone's last stitch should have been a front post double crochet. Now let's do our following back loop half double crochet together. So we're going to be skipping 1 stitch from our previous row and then into the next, which should be our stitch marker stitch. Insert with a back loop half double crochet. And don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. And close off the row with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. And now our row 3 is complete. From here, every even number row is going to be the same as our previous run. So we're going to chain 1, flip our work, 1 back loop slip stitch until we reach our stitch marker, 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our following stitch marker, and then closing off the row with 1 back loop slip into the rest of our stitches. Then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the following odd number row. So we are back. Our row 4 is now complete. Now we're going to get started on our following alpine stitch row. So our alpine stitch rows are always going to start and end with back loop half double crochets for the same amount of stitches that we blocked off for the ribbing. So I'm going to chain 2, flip my work. I'm going to be starting with 6 back loop half double crochets and then I'll meet you back. So now that our back loop half double crochets are completed, we're going to do the following row in our alpine stitch detail. Now when it comes to doing our alpine stitch detail, our stitches need to be staggered from our previous row. So as an example, our first alpine stitch for our previous alpine stitch detail started with a front post double crochet. So now we're going to start this one off with a half double crochet. So what we're going to do is yarn over. Just into that following stitch, which should be the stitch that's on top of that front post double, insert with a half double crochet. Then we're going to be doing a front post double crochet, so yarn over. When it comes to doing our post stitches, we're always going to be worked into our previous odd number row. So into our previous odd number row, which is our row 3, since we're working on row 5, we're going to insert our hook underneath that following stitch, which should be that next half double crochet. Like I said, our stitches should be staggered from the previous row. So underneath the body of that half double crochet and through the other side, yarn over, pull through. Then same as the previous rows, when we have these 3 loops on our hook, pull up tall to get the same height, pull through 2, pull through 2. Let's do this again. So yarn over, preparing for a half double. We are going to skip 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double counts as that stitch. And into the next, insert with a half double. Then to do our front post double, yarn over. Into that next stitch, which should be a half double crochet from our previous row, insert your hook underneath, through the other side, pull through, pull up tall, pull through 2, pull through 2. From here, we're going to continue to do our alpine stitch detail until we reach our following stitch marker stitch. So we are back. Our alpine stitch detail is complete. As you guys can see, all of our stitches are staggered from our previous row, and everyone's last stitch in this alpine stitch detail should have been a half double crochet. Now just to close off the row, like our previous alpine stitch row, put 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Our row 5 is now complete. Now every even number row is going to be done exactly the same way. So chain 1, flip our work, do back loop slip stitches, single crochets, and then more back loop slip stitches, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just finished up our row 6. Now from here, what we're going to do is just continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until we get the height of the piece that we need. Now if you guys need timestamps on any of these sections, they will be linked in the description. But just to make sure that we all have the sizing down, we're all going to place this first row where we'd like for the bottom of this cardigan to be, but keeping in mind that we are going to have a bottom band as well. So I'd like for mine to be a little bit longer. I'm going to place mine at around mid-thigh, and then just continue to repeat rows 3 through 6 until this reaches roughly about mid-chest, because that's where I'd like for my cardigan to start to cut up into the shoulder. And then I'll meet you guys back right when we're about to get started on a repeat of row 3. We are back. We have just finished up the height of our front panel. Now I have a total of 66 rows. The length that I have is roughly 17 inches or 43 centimeters. Now we're going to start working on our neckline. So what we're all going to do, since we all should have ended right after a single crochet row and we're about to get started on a repeat of row 3, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work. Get started with our repeat of row 3, leaving the last 2 stitches, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our repeat of row 3, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now what we're going to do is a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets. So what we're going to do is yarn over, insert our hook into that second to last back loop, pull through, into that last back loop, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. Then we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and do our even number row. Now for this portion, since we just decreased by 1 stitch, we're going to be doing our back loop slip stitch rows, but for this first portion of our back loop slip stitches, we will have 1 stitch less. So as an example, I now have 5 stitches for my back loop half double crochet portion, so I'll be doing 5 back loop slip stitches, then the same single crochets and closing off with the same back loop slip stitches. I'll meet you back at the end of the row. My even number row is now complete. Now just to do our decrease row once more, chain 2, flip our work, do our repeat of row 5, leave the last 2 stitches, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. We have just finished up our repeat of row 5, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to decrease together again. So all we're going to do is yarn over into our second to last stitch, insert into that back loop, last stitch is back loop, pull through all 4, and that's it. Go ahead and finish up our following even number row, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. Our following even number row is complete. From here, all we're going to do is basically just continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making sure that we end off the row with a decrease of 2 half double crochets, making sure that our stitch marker stays at mid-chest until this portion reaches up to the top of our shoulder. Once we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. And just as a really quick tip, when we're doing our decreases into the alpine stitch detail, everything will be done exactly the same, but the last 2 stitches is just always going to be a decrease of 2 half doubles. So we are back. I've just finished up the neckline portion. Now I have a total of 91 rows, or my total length is now 25 inches or 36 centimeters. Now from here we're going to get started on the other front panel that we have. So go ahead and make the same exact chain that we made when we got started on the side. Insert our stitch markers into the same stitches. Then we're going to do our same ribbing and alpine stitch rows for the same amount of rows that we have for this portion until we do our first decrease row. So we are back. I've just finished up the length portion of my other front panel. Now we're going to do our decrease portion or our neckline portion together. But since this portion isn't reversible, we're going to have to start our rows off with a decrease now instead of ending it with a decrease. So what we're going to do is chain 2, flip our work, and start our following row off with a decrease of 2 half double crochets. So to do this together, yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through all 4, then continue on with this row per usual. So 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we're ready to do our alpine stitch detail. Alpine stitch detail, close off the row with 6 back loop half double crochets. So we are back. Our first decrease row is completed. Now, the decrease portion for this side is going to be basically the same idea as the other front panel that we did, but remember we're just going to start every alpine stitch row with a decrease of 2 half double crochets, including when we start to work into the alpine stitch detail, if you guys need to, it's going to start with decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets as well. We're just going to continue to repeat our decrease and our slip stitch row, remembering that that doesn't have any increases or decreases, until we have the same amount of total rows as the other front panel. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. We are back. We have just finished up the entirety of our second front panel. Now we're just going to half double crochet along the edges just to clean everything up to make it easier to seam. So just taking a look at the first front panel that we did, we're all going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of the length side of our front panel. We're inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch to all make sure that we're showing the front of the half double crochet row. So we're all going to start by inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and start with a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just need the height. And what we're going to do is just put 2 half double crochets into every side half double crochet. We are going to be skipping over our slip stitch row. So yarn over, into that first side row, insert with 1 half double, then into the same side stitch with a second half double. We're going to skip over our slip stitch row, insert with 2 half double crochets again, and that's it. We're basically just going to repeat this, making our way all the way up. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we're going to repeat the same thing on the other front panel. The only difference is that instead of inserting your hook into the bottom corner stitch, we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch, because remember, we still want to show the front of our half double crochet row. Alright, so we are back. Our half double crochet row along the edge of our front panels are completed, and now we're going to get started on our back. Now the back panel is basically going to be the front panel portion without the decrease and a little bit wider. So I actually already have mine completed, so let's talk you guys through that. So pretty much the same as the front panel, we're going to start by making an odd number of chains. This chain is going to need to reach from the tip of our shoulder, across our back to the tip of our other shoulder, and then from there we're just going to insert our stitch markers for the same amount of stitches that we did for our ribbing detail, because we do want it to align once when it's all seamed up. But from there we're just going to continue on with our ribbing, alpine stitch detail, ribbing, and then make your way back for the same amount of total rows that we did for the front panel. Then what we're going to do after that is our half double crochet row along the outer edge that we just did for the front panel together. So once when the entirety of our piece is completed, half double crochet into every side half double crochet, working our way back down on both sides of our cable stitch detail. Once we have both of those completed, I will meet you guys back so we can seam everything together. So we are back. The entirety of our back panel plus the half double crochet rows along the edges are complete. Now we're ready to seam everything together. Now we're going to be doing outside loop slip stitch seams for the shoulders and for the sides. So we're all going to want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out. Then for the shoulder, we're all going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, making sure that the neckline or the decreased portion is along the middle of our back panel. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Then what we're going to do from here is start with just one single crochet into the side half double crochet row and through both the front and the back panel. So just find that top loop within the front panel, same top loop within the back panel, and just single crochet there. Then into the rest of our stitches our outside loop slip stitch seam. So start by finding our first stitch and we're going to insert our hook into that front loop. Then find our next stitch within the back panel and insert only into that back loop. When we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that's it. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop. Pull through all 3. And that's it. We're going to continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, repeat this on the other side, and then I will meet you back to seam up the sides. So we are back. Our shoulder seams are all complete. Now we're going to seam up our sides. So first things first, we're all going to need to insert our stitch marker into the stitch for the width that we'd like for our sleeve to be. Now I'd like for mine to be roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters, so I inserted my stitch marker into the 25th stitch. Now just as a really quick tip, the lower you insert your stitch marker, the wider your armhole is going to be, or the higher, the slimmer. But what we're going to do from here is another outside loop slip stitch seam. So just making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Do our outside loop slip stitch seam, making our way all the way up to our stitch marker, but don't do a chain up one and cut because we can work straight into the sleeve together from there. We are back. We have made our way all the way up with our outside loop slip stitch seam, and now we can just get started on the sleeve. So all we're going to do is we're all going to start with our back loop slip stitch row. And it is going to be done pretty much the same way as the ribbing that we did for both the front and the back panel. Now we do want to make sure for this first back loop slip stitch row that we're working counterclockwise or to the right, because this ribbing, like I said in one of our previous clips, isn't reversible. So all we're going to do is once we reach our stitch marker is chain 1, then making sure that we're working counterclockwise, just insert your hook into that following stitch with 1 back loop slip stitch, and the rest of this is per usual. So just continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making our way all the way around. Once we do make our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. Our slip stitch row is completed. Now from here, we're just going to do a half double crochet row. So after we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. We want to make sure that we're flipping our work to make sure that we see the ribbing, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Slip stitch into the second chain that we made to close off the row, and then just continue on with our back loop half double and back loop slip stitches until we get the sleeve length that we want, but keeping in mind that we are going to have some detail along the end and a cuff as well. So I would say roughly around where our elbow is. I'll meet you back right after a half double crochet row, and then we can get started on the detail together. So we are back. I have the majority of the length of my sleeve completed. I have a total of 32 rows. My length is roughly 8 inches or 20 centimeters. Now we're going to start working on the detail portion, which is the alpine stitch right before we get started on the cuff. So what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and do a single crochet row. So since everyone's last row should have been a half double crochet row, we're going to treat it as if it was a slip stitch row. So basically, after we slip stitch into our second chain, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back. Our single crochet row is complete. Now we're going to get started on our alpine stitch detail. Now the alpine stitches is going to be done pretty much the same way as we did for the front and back panel, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. Right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to chain 2 and flip our work to make sure that all of our details on the same side. Now just to do the first few stitches together, we're all going to start with the front post double crochet, so yarn over, finding that half double crochet from our previous half double crochet row, so we are going to be skipping over that single crochet row. We're going to bring our hook down underneath the body of that stitch, pull through, pull up tall, pull through 2, then yarn over, skip 1 stitch from our previous row and insert into the next with a half double crochet, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. Now once when we do, might as well just do our single crochet row as well. So slip stitch into that second chain, Chain 1, make sure to flip your work and put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and then I'll meet you back when this row and our following single crochet row is completed. We are back. Our first alpine stitch row and our second row, which is our single crochet row, is complete. Our second alpine stitch row, or the third row for our detail, is going to be another alpine stitch row, so basically the same as the front and back panel. I'm just going to get started on it with you, just to remind you that our stitches need to be staggered. So right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, chain 2 and flip our work. Now what we're all going to do is start with a half double crochet, because the first stitch from our previous alpine stitch row started with a front post double, so yarn over. On top of that first stitch with a half double, then yarn over, working into our previous alpine stitch row again, insert underneath the body of that half double crochet with a front post double, and that's it. We're now going to continue to do this until we reach the end of the row. Our following row is going to be a single crochet row, and all we're going to do is continue to repeat these alpine stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, making sure that there is a single crochet row in between them until we get the total length of the sleeve that we want. Once we do, I'll meet you back right after we finish up an alpine stitch row. We are back. I have just finished up my alpine stitch detail portion of my sleeve. I now have a total of 38 rows. Now from here, we're going to get started on the cuff. So we're all going to need to do a single crochet row with some decreases just to get it to cinch a little bit more. So what we're going to do is a single crochet row with a decrease into every other stitch. So right after we've slip stitched into that second chain, we're going to chain 1. We don't need to flip our work now, but what we're going to do is single crochet into the first 2 stitches and then decrease into the next. And that's it. Let's do that again. There's 1 single crochet. There is our second single crochet, and then decrease. How that's going to work is insert your hook into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through for 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're just going to continue to do that, making our way all the way around. We are back. Our single crochet row is complete. Now from here, right after we've slip stitched in that chain space, make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to chain 10. Now that we have our chain, block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, next chain, insert, gently pull through everything. Continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain to reach the end of the row. We have put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now into the base, we're going to connect it. So find that next available stitch into the base. Insert in through there with a slip stitch, so pull through everything, remembering that that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. To work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch, flip our work. From here, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Finding the last stitch from our previous row, not those 2 slip stitches into the base, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, again, back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the base just to connect it once more. We've put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. We're now just finishing up with our row 3. Now we're going to connect it into the base together once more. Find that next available stitch into the base. Insert with a slip stitch to connect this row. That still doesn't count as a stitch. Then just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base. Also doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work, and 1 back loop slip stitch goes into every stitch. Continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back to seam it all together. We are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. Now I did go ahead and already seam it together, but this is going to be the same seam that we did for the shoulders and for the sides. So just continue to do our outside loop slip stitch seam when we don't have any more stitches left. Then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then repeat everything we did here on the other side, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. Now that both of our sleeves are completed, we're about to get started on the bottom band. So first things first, we're all going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, the bottom faced away from us. Then we're all going to be inserting our hook into the left corner stitch of our front panel. We all want to make sure that it's within the left so that we show the front of the single crochet. And now all we're going to do is just put one single crochet into every stitch, and every side row we should just have a few, making our way all the way around. Once we reach this corner, do a chain up, one, and cut, and then I'll meet you back to get started on the length. We are back. Our single crochet row along the bottom of our piece is completed. I did do a chain up, one, and cut right after my last single crochet, and now we're going to get started on the length of our band. So first things first, we're all going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom left corner stitch of our front panel. Again, we're doing this to make sure that all of the ribbing is seen. So what we're going to do from here is insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and start by making a chain the length that we'd like for our bottom band to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 12. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a half double crochet row back down. Block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, so yarn over, into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, insert with a half double, so pull through 3. Continue with one half double crochet into every chain, and I'll meet you back at the base. So we're back. We put one half double crochet into every chain. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now connecting it into the base is actually going to be done exactly the same way as our cuff, so just to talk you guys through it, find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch, that's just to connect this row, then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and then now we're going to be putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So for this bottom band, it's just going to be a back loop half double and back loop slip stitch, making our way all the way around, connecting it in the same way that we did for the cuff. We are back. We have made our way all the way around with our bottom band. Now from here, all we're going to do is our front band, which is actually just going to be front and back post double crochets. So what we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into any one of the bottom corner stitches of our front panel, and we're going to start with a half double crochet row. So all that's going to be is one half double crochet into every stitch, one single crochet into every side single crochet row. So we run into a side single crochet row right here. One single crochet is going to be worked into there. Then 2 single crochets into every side half double crochet row, skipping over our slip stitch rows, making our way all the way up and around and all the way back down to this corner. When we have this row completed, I will meet you back. We are back. Our half double crochet row going all the way up and over is complete. Now we're just going to get started on our ribbing, and our ribbing is going to start with some front and back post double crochets. So from where we're at, chain 2 and flip. So what we're going to do is a front post double crochet, so yarn over. We're all going to find our second half double crochet from our previous row. We don't want to work into that edge stitch because we want it to be nice and flat along the bottom. So just underneath the body of that second half double crochet, insert your hook underneath, pull through 2, pull through 2. That is a front post double crochet. Now let's do a back post, so yarn over. Bring your hook underneath our work now, over the body of that next half double crochet and through the other side, pull through, then yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. We should now have a front and back post double crochet. Let's do the next set of stitches together and let you do the rest on your own. So yarn over, underneath the body of that next stitch, through the other side, pull through 2, pull through 2, then yarn over, underneath our piece now, over the body of that next stitch, pull through 2, pull through 2, and that's it. We're going to continue with our front and back post double crochets, making our way all the way around until we all have just one stitch left. Alrighty, so we're back with our second front band row, which was just front and back post double crochets, making our way all the way up and around. We have left the last stitch, and now we're just going to close off our row with a half double crochet just to secure everything down and to keep everything nice and even. So all we're going to do is just yarn over, into the last stitch, insert with a half double crochet, and now this row is completed. Now all the following rows are going to be a repeat of this row, so chain 2 and flip our work. Now all we're going to be doing is just extending our previous row stitches to get the ribbing that we want. So as an example, the first post stitch from our previous row is a front post double crochet, so I will be doing a front post double crochet. If yours looks like a back post, you will be doing a back post, but either way, we're just going to do our post stitch on top of our post stitch, making sure that they are the same. So I did a front post double on top of my front post double. Then my next post stitch is a back post, so I'll be doing a back post into there. And that's it. We're just going to continue to extend our post stitches, making our way all the way around, making sure we close off the row with a half double crochet, the same way that we just did. Then from there, just continue to repeat this row until we get the total front band width that we like. When we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So we are back. Our front band is complete. I did a total of 4 rows, and now we're just going to finish up our piece with our pocket. As you guys can see, one of mine is already completed. So this is going to be fairly simple. All we're going to do is back loop half double and back loop slip stitch rows for the width that we'd like for our pocket to be. Now I'd like for mine to be roughly the width of my alpine stitch detail. So I'm going to start by making a chain 20 because that is the height that I'd like for my pocket to be, but keeping in mind that we are going to have an alpine stitch detail brim as well. And I'm just going to do my back loop half double and back loop slip stitch rows until I have a width that covers my alpine stitch detail. We're going to start with our half double crochet row and end with our back loop half double crochet row, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so we are back. I've just completed the width of my pocket. I have a total of 15 rows, that's roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and my height so far is roughly 5 inches or 13 centimeters. Now we're going to do our alpine stitch brim. So all that's going to be is a half double crochet row along the edge of our piece. So what we're going to do from here is chain 2, and just put 2 half double crochets into every side half double crochet, skipping over our side slip stitch rows. So our half double crochet row along the top of our pocket is complete. Now, just to make our way over to the other side, put 1 single crochet into every stitch and then I'll meet you back. So our single crochet row is complete. Now we're just going to do our alpine stitch detail. Now since we already know how to do that, I'm just going to do the first row with you. What we're going to do is yarn over and into the first half double crochet from our row 1, making sure we're not counting that chain 2, is a front post double crochet. Then skip a stitch into the next a half double crochet and just continue on with this to reach the end of the row. And just as a quick tip, if our second to last stitch is a half double crochet, meaning our last stitch is going to be a front post double crochet, I'll meet you guys back to show you what we're going to do there, just to make sure that everything is secured down. So we are back. I have just a few more of my alpine stitch rows completed, but I just wanted to meet you guys back when my second to last stitch was a half double crochet, meaning our last stitch should be a front post double crochet. Now whenever this happens, all we're going to do is just put 1 additional half double crochet into that last stitch instead of a front post double crochet, just so that we have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. Now as you guys can see, I have more alpine stitch rows completed, a total of 4 so far, but all we're going to do is just continue to do our alpine stitches until you get the height of the brim that you want. Now I'm going to stop after these 4 rows. The total height for my pocket is now roughly 6 inches or 15 centimeters, so now from here we're just going to sew it into the front panel. Now when it comes to sewing our pocket into our front panel, I don't really have any real rhyme or reason to it, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. All I'm going to do is use my tapestry needle and just weave it in through my front panel, along the bottom and up the sides, making sure that we're leaving the top open so we can actually use it. And we just want to make sure that we're sticking within the same stitch, making our way all the way down to make sure that our pocket is aligned. So we are back. We have just finished up connecting the pocket to both of our front panels, and now we are all done. Now last thing I have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch y'all in the next one. Bye!